X Soldier brings you today's video. Syr Vondam Sunstar Exemplar is an interesting commander. I actually overlooked it during spoiler season, but it's more interesting than I initially thought. Multiple ways to build it. You can go for a sacrifice route, a Voltron style build, or a flicker variant. I have decided on the latter. Either way, you're going to need to see buffs on the Vondam, because whenever it dies or is put into exile while its power is 4 or greater, destroy a non-land permanent. And when another creature you control dies or is put into exile, put a plus counter on this and gain a life. So it's a bit of a balancing act depending on the direction you decide to go, but like I said, I decided on flicker for this variant. So I didn't go for a full anthem build, but there are quite a few anthems and means of buffing the commander. Syr Vondam particularly wants to be 4+ power. So any anthems that give +2 in this instance are going to be great. So Flowering of the White Tree gives that and Ward 1. Bastion Protector gives Indestructible as well as the +2/+2 buff. Deathbringer Liege gives the same buff on Orzhov creatures, but we can also, when we cast a black and white spell, tap down a creature and destroy it. Worst case scenario with this, we play a black spell into it and destroy a creature that swung in previously. And then there's some equipments that I'm not entirely hopeful for. I'm hoping that they're going to be good, but I just don't think they will be. Hilderblade and the Ronin War Club in particular are the ones I'm concerned with. Each give a high enough buff to power. This one has to attach itself to a creature that has recently entered under your control, so without consistent flicker on your commander you don't necessarily have that much control over where it's equipped. And the Hilderblade only equips itself at the end of the turn, so if you're flickering on an opponent's turn, you'll get at least one destruction with this thing, but it is very, very slow, so it might be worth replacing these with something else. A better equipment is Hero's Blade. Whenever a legendary creature enters under your control, you may attach it to their +3/+2, so we can just only say yes to our commander re-entering after flickers, and this will always make sure that it's buffed up highly enough to get the destruction going. More classic anthem effects, although we do have to jump through hoops slightly. Commander's Insignia cares about the number of times we've cast our commander and gives +1/+1 for each of those. And same for Call of Unity, except it is the number of turn cycles that we've seen since this entered. So these go well with the other creatures that we've got in play as well. We've got some weaklings and they will be buffed up nicely, otherwise they would just be sat there like dumb idiots, but it's mainly buffing our commander that we're concerned with here. So before we go into some of the flicker stuff, let's have a look at what we actually want to point the flicker at. So Helpful Hunter, Inspiring Overseer, Combat Thrasher, the Priest, the Companion, the Wall, the Callous Blood Mage, Circuit Mender. All of these things are cantrips, so they enter or leave and draw us a card. Not too good on their own, but in a flicker deck you are going to be constantly cycling these in and out of play, and so you will more than likely get more than one card out of them, and that makes them much more useful, as well as the fact that the anthems, like I mentioned, are going to make these powerful so they can actually get into the red zone and be even more useful. Ketramos, we should assume, is not going to be able to attack or block because it needs to see 7 or more cards in exile. You might just see that naturally over the course of a game if someone uses Graveyard Hate or something like that, but really it's just in here to sit on the battlefield, loses a life and draws a card every time something is exiled, which should be plenty in this list. Necropotence, we get a decent amount of life from our commander, so that should offset the life that we put into here. One of the 3 game changers in this bracket 3 list. And then Angel of Indemnity and Sun Titan are both ETBs, reanimate small stuff. We can see in this section alone there's plenty of small stuff to reanimate. Runescarred Demon is a tutor with legs and a decent 6/6 flyer. Should note as well that the Combat Thresher not only cantrips, but for 3 mana comes down to 1/1, then gets flickered and transforms itself into a 3/3 double striker, so well worth an include, this one. There's some relevant removal stuff as well, the usual ones that you would see, but some ETBs as well. Lauren is a white Reclamation Sage, can use it for card draw in a pinch. The Vigilance with the Anthems will make it a good blocker as well. Skyclave Apparition, exile on 4 CMC and below. We will give our opponents a decent number of tokens with this, so we'll have to look out for it if we're flickering it, but guaranteed that the things we're removing are way better than the tokens we give them. Ravenous Chupacabra destroys any creature, Witch Enchanter, another Reclamation Sage, and a Bolt land, so pulls double duty. Probably wouldn't play it unless it had a land on the back of it. Sheoldred is an Edict, a decent 4-5 menace body as well. Obviously flickering edicts over and over again is going to be really good, as this one doesn't affect us. We don't have to sacrifice into it. It's not like the Merciless Executioner type cards. And then we could always go for transforming it in order to destroy more stuff, have our opponents discard cards, and then we get to reanimate at the end. Could just be that we pay to transform this in order to destroy more stuff, and then flicker it and it comes back in as Sheoldred and we get another edict. We'll be really nicely controlling the board with that. And then a more thematic piece of removal is Getaway Glamour. Flickers a creature, but for 2 additional mana it can also destroy a creature with the greatest power, and that's at instant speed as well, so it might be a little bit narrow, but if we can just use this as a 2 mana flicker most of the time and every now and then destroy something with it, then it's probably still worth including. So how do we actually flicker stuff? Well, you will have seen all this stuff before. There's plenty of instants that can do it. It's just a case of cherry picking your favourite one. There's some Wrath protection in the form of Ghostway, Eerie Interlude and Semester's End. These will bring them back at the end step, so you can see the Wrath. Even if you've cast the Wrath yourself, you can hold priority, exile everything in response, save yourself from the destruction, and then have it all re-enter and get the ETBs again. Just have to be careful between Blink and Flicker. I always forget which is which, but some creatures re-enter immediately and some enter at the end step, so just make sure you know which is which before you cast anything. But we've got Flicker on creatures as well, so Flicker Wisp, Charming Prince, Felidar Guardian is part of plenty of combos. Restoration Angel, play it at flash speed on a flyer. Felia, good means of repetitive flicker. Abdul is a combo piece as well. Teleportation Circle and Conjurer's Closet gives us repeatable flicker at the end of the turn. And up here we've got another round from one of the newer sets, that Cowboy set, whatever it was called. We can flicker multiple times on one card if we can put enough mana into it. Don't think there's too much left to go over. There's the usual stuff in the ramp package as you would typically find, but Knight of the White Orchid and Solemn Simulacrum are some ETBs that can land ramp us as well. Always good to have land ramp as opposed to just relying on the rocks. Got a small Voltron package as well. Brotherhood Regalia protects with Ward 2, but it also makes a potentially big Syr Vondam unblockable, so we could threaten commander damage. It's not really the aim of the deck, but those plus counters will soon mount up. Swiftfoot Boots, Haste and Hexproof, and the Sword of Hearth and Home not only adds to our flicker shenanigans, but it will land ramp us, give protection from green and white, and give us that +2 to power that we care about on our commander. We could always just use this on a different creature in order to flicker our Syr Vondam if it already has the buff from an anthem effect or something like that, so very versatile equipment, this one. And finally, I think this is the last of it. We've got some wipes that are reasonably cheap, so that we're more likely to be able to use something like Ghostway to cast these, hold priority, and then go for the mass flicker in response to have our stuff enter after the Wrath has taken place, and blinking a Massacre Worm over and over again with something like Panharmonicon in play is going to deal a lot of damage and wipe out all of your opponent's creatures. As for the combos, a lot of them are pretty much the same, they just use some redundancy from the list, so Abdul is going to be in your hand. Restoration Angel in play has already flickered something. You drop Abdul, exiling the Restoration Angel, and it will exile it as an O-ring effect until this leaves the battlefield. Flicker it with Ephemera or some means of flicker. Resto Angel brings Abdul back immediately, triggering its ETB again, exiling Restoration Angel and anything else you want ETBs for. It's rinse and repeat at that point for infinite ETBs, and you get creature tokens from the Soldier enabling of Abdul as well. And then a very similar combo is Felidar Guardian and Restoration Angel, flickering each other in and out over and over again. And with the infinite flickers, Syr Vondam can just be sat to the side, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You can be gaining infinite life, or hope that you can get through some damage with the Menace, which is more useful than you might realise. Let's see how it plays in real life though. Plenty of mana for us, and if we can get into more black mana, we can even refill our hand with Necropotence. We are a couple of pips away, so maybe shouldn't keep this, but I'll try it. A Birds of Paradise for the Eladamri player. Nothing for the partners Prava and Tevesh Sat, Doom of Fools. And then for Sephiris, he's played a Yuan Tai, however you say that. Another white mana for us off the Aganjo. Let's just Yeah, I don't think there's any rush to get our commander out at the moment, so we might as well get Summoning Sickness off Failure. It does have to attack. Sylvan Caryatid. Tortured Existence in order to discard a creature and grab one from the bin. And then an Apprentice Necromancer. Black tap, sacrifice a creature in order to reanimate one. And the 2/1 swings in unblocked down the middle. So enters the Lost Mine of Phandelver and gets a Scry 1. Swiftfoot Boots goes nicely with the Brotherhood Regalia, but we're not seeing any decent flicker targets here. And we might as well put a counter on our dog to make it easier to swing in, so I'll just go in against the Mana Dork. And he decides to take the damage. Eladamri by turn 3 still only has 1 land, but still manages to get the commander in. Private of the Steel Legion for the tokens player. I was just thinking maybe we could go for a Gonjo, seeing as how we have 2 legendary creatures, it will only cost 1 mana, and destroy this to slow down his token production. He might be able to reanimate it with this, or just replay it again straight away, but he's going to have to discard maybe a decent creature at least. Could slow him down sufficiently. Well, he's tapping down all his black mana, so he won't be able to do that. There is a Void Mage Prodigy though, and he does have the double blue in order to counter something, but that will have to be a spell, and luckily for us, a Gonjo is an ability. So the unblockable goes to the left this time. We will point the 4 damage from our land towards it. He could use this to sacrifice the Apprentice Necromancer, so it could be that we've got a couple of counter spells with legs to get through here. He vanquished the Horde for us. We can try and do a Mass Flicker in response to something like that, but obviously we'd need to draw into it first. Let's put another plus counter on the Failure. I'm not very happy with how it's going so far. Vanquish the Horde could probably make this guy scoop actually. So we can drop our land and try to land a Brotherhood Regalia that can go onto the Failure and make it unblockable. Might be that okay, they pass priority really quickly there, so I'm not sure what the counter magic's been held up for. Not going to bother with the Swiftfoot Boots just yet. But in comes our commander again, and puts another plus counter onto the dog. Eladamri can be activated even with 1 land thanks to the 2 Mana Dorks. Grabs himself a Bane of Progress, so the Brotherhood Regalia going down straight away. But good to see the back of the Tortured Existence as well. I've seen more devastating Bane of Progress. Okay, and that player decides to scoop. I thought we'd be getting the mono green player scooping before now. Might still be worth a Vanquish the Horde if we can get into the land for the Angel of Indemnity, because we could make the green player scoop at that point. Commander Sphere comes out just after the Wrath. Alright, there's a black land for us, so we're 1 step closer to getting out Necropotence. We can protect our commander from the Wrath with Failure for a turn as well, because it comes in at the end step. So I think we are going to go for that. I don't imagine you're going to see this video anyway. Swing the dog into the right. Land 4 damage on him. Drop a land. Vanquish. Costs us only 2 mana. That wipes everything out. Putting a couple of Zulaport Cutthroat triggers on the stack. And then we're likely just getting down the Swiftfoot Boots after this. So now we've got Angel of Indemnity online next turn. We can reanimate the dog straight away. And now Eladamri manages to get into a land, but can't do anything with the 2 mana. Doesn't seem as though he's quitting yet. Seems like the other Orzhov player is just timing out on us now. Eventually decides on Mirror Entity. Alright, a Restoration Angel is a nice means of flicker. Probably good for... oh, actually you can't flicker... yeah, you can't flicker an Angel with the Restoration Angel. I was thinking we could get double ETBs on this, but we can do that with the dog, so let's go and grab it back. Don't have the mana to give the Corgi haste, unfortunately. So let's go to the right with our commander. Our opponent can't block thanks to the Menace. Elvish Archdruid will only tap for 1 mana at the moment. So now he's starting to make the lands 2 in a row. Slaughter the Strong. Each player chooses any number of creatures they control with total power 4 or less and sacrifices all the other ones. So unfortunately not going to be flickering this. That does mean that one of our creatures died, so we get a plus counter on the Syr Vondam. And there's that black mana we were hoping for, so now we can afford Restoration Angel and the Necropotence. So we'll go for that straight away. Still not making use of the Swiftfoot Boots haste, unfortunately. Could maybe wait a turn actually, so that we can make use of it to swing in. And yeah, therefore we can do some Syr Vondam stuff. I think that might actually be worth going for. So we'll take everything in to the right, although I don't think our commander is going to be hitting. Failure is going to flicker the Restoration Angel. So we need to bear in mind that some flickers and blinks, I forget which is which, are at the end step when they come back, and some are immediate. So we still get to hit with the commander here, and then the Resto Angel will come back and flicker this, debuff it, but we get to destroy something. A block made with the mirror entity, and he could go for the buff here in order to have them trade. That looks as though that's what he's doing. So we'll get his mirror entity, but we'll be able to flicker the Vondam and destroy his commander sphere, which is what I'm looking at doing here. So the commander gets buffed again, and we'll still have the angel re-enter. So he's at 7 points of commander damage. We might as well put hexproof onto the commander, although it's going to get flickered anyway, it doesn't really matter. So there we go, our restoration angel enters and we flicker our commander. That is a May ability, we'll say yes to it. And because it had such big power, we get to destroy something. They can sacrifice this in response to draw something, draw the top card obviously, and yeah, we're just hurting their mana a bit here. So they do draw. But in all that, we did lose out on our Corgi again, unfortunately. We've got a few more means of reanimation. We've got Sun Titan, and then we've got Sheoldred, which can be flipped into a Saga. It'll take us a few turns, but we'll reanimate all the creatures with that. A Defense of the Heart is something that I would very much like to destroy. Not likely that Defense of the Heart is going to see 3 or more creatures during the next turn cycle, though, so we can play around that whilst we draw into more cards. Manages to further fix the white mana with a command tower and gets his commander into play. Luckily we've got a flyer available to us, but sends that up to 6 loyalty straight away. Well, we draw into another creature, which I now don't want to play into this. Let's swing some damage through to the commander. He will have to double block with both of his Thrall here. So now let's drop the enchantment. Forget what the encore cost on this thing is actually, that is 8. So we're 1 mana away from that. We'll probably draw into the mana we need with the Necropotence here. Put 6 life into it and go down to 30. And then Swiftfoot Boots onto Syr Vondam. If we draw into something like Generous Gift, we'll still be able to play it. But there go all the triggers on the stack at the end step. And we do get into some removal in the form of Lauren and Anguished Unmaking. Can't hold up Anguished Unmaking during the turn cycle though. But we do draw into Ronin War Club, which if we can flicker our commander into that, then it will be re-equipped and is an easy way of buffing this enough to start destroying permanents. Taking us a while, turn 8, but we're finally getting somewhere. Oracle of Moldiah is another elf and reveals on top a forest, so looks as though he's going to be catching up on lands. And then shows Ancient Adamantoise. An 820, damage isn't removed from this creature during cleanup steps. All damage that will be dealt to you and other permanents you control is dealt to this instead. When it dies, exile it with 10 tap treasure tokens in play. Guardian Project in order to draw more cards. The green player can now very easily get back into this with a bit of luck after some mana screw in the early game. A Farewell now, exiling, and I pass priority, so might have gone for more cards with Necropotence there, but trying to pass priority in order to save time in the game. And we've lost our only means of haste in the deck, I think. So it might be time to get down Runescarred Demon. That should be decent against Tevesh Sat. They do decide to plus it again. We don't need to play Lauren or anything now to deal with the Defense of the Heart. This is turning out to be a better game than I thought it was going to be. We do draw a card thanks to the Necropotence not being in anymore. So let's go Urborg so we don't have to take damage to Ancient Tomb and get down the flying Runescarred Demon. That is an ETB of course, as are most of the creatures in the deck. So with that, I think we can grab ourselves either Teleportation Circle or the 5 mana one, the Conjurer's Closet. Artifacts are easier to get rid of, so I'll go for the Teleportation Circle, plus this is cheaper. A See the Unwritten, one that you don't see very much of. Does not have Ferocious, so revealing the top 8 cards of the library, a creature from amongst them onto the battlefield. Hasn't managed to stack the top of his library at all, but shows us a Hypergenesis, Gala Greeters, a Forest, Selvala, which is what he plays, another basic Genesis Wave, Elvish Pioneer, and Fauna Shaman. Definitely gone for an elf tribal build. Tevesh Sat only at 6 loyalty after sacrificing to draw, now has 7 cards in hand. We should be able to draw some cards into Selvala if we're lucky with the flicker. A Knight token being created from the Righteous Confluence. They get rid of that just in time for us to drop the Teleportation Circle. He's up to 39, and there is a Norn's Wellspring. So that's going to be some card draw. That does count with tokens dying, so hence the reason it's in here. but we can deal with his commander nicely enough. So drop a land. I don't see any reason to not just go straight through to combat here. So successfully deal with that. Now we definitely want the circle in play, and then I think it's just our commander, so no need to take life to the tomb. And there's no point in flickering anything other than the Runescarred Demon here. Not only will it untap it, it will draw us a card to this, and it will also allow us to tutor again, plus counter and a life from our commander. And let's see, maybe with the ETBs, something like the Panharmonicon, if I can learn the alphabet quickly, would be useful to us for the double ETBs. Let's grab that, although I'm tempted by something like the Deathbringer Liege. Still not drawing into too much flicker. Yeah, let's go for the Deathbringer. Then we can decide to flicker our commander next turn if we want to. So that means that the War Club isn't quite as useful if we're going to be keeping hold of the Liege. Could always reanimate that, hopefully, with the Sun Titan if we need to. But this is a little bit clunky in the deck. It's not quite as useful unless we can consistently flicker our commander specifically, because it does have to equip to different creatures that enter. We don't have a choice in the matter. Eladamri back into play again. Another Wrath in Martial Coup. Our Syr Vondam isn't quite strong enough to destroy something on the way out, unfortunately. And that's enough to have the green player quit on us. So at this point, I'm wishing I'd gone for the Panharmonicon. I suppose, how much is our commander now? 6. So I haven't worked it out yet, but we might be able to afford to do both still with the teleportation circle in tow. Decides to draw with the Norn's Wellspring immediately. And there's a Charming Prince for us, a nice flicker enabler. So I think it is 6 for this. Yes it is, which makes it 11 mana in total. And we've only got 10 available to us, so we're not going for this into our commander. In that case, let's go for Lauren. Yeah, we can go Lauren, the Inspiring Overseer, and Charming Prince to draw more cards. Just trying to work out my plays ahead of time, because I don't want to take any life to this if I don't have to. Get rid of the artifact. Need to be careful with when we can and can't play our tap land as well, because we'll get to play it this turn, ready for the Liege and Commander in one turn, I imagine. So gain a life and draw. And that draws us into another cantrip effect, so plenty of those available to us at this point. Let's play the Charming Prince to flicker that Inspiring Overseer. And that comes in at the beginning of the next end step, so get down the shadowy backstreet to try and fix a draw. Arcane Signet is not something we need now, and we need to put a target on the stack with Teleportation Circle, so we can't have the creature re-enter from exile and then flicker it again, unfortunately. We might as well flicker the Charming Prince and scry 2. And on top we see another cantrip, a Commander's Insignia. We'll definitely have the buffs available on that to be useful if we don't keep hold of the Deathbringer Liege, so let's go bottom for the cat, and the Insignia can stay on top, ready for us to draw into here. It might be that, again, we can play our commander into this and it will get the last 2 abilities, tap something and destroy it. So if he decides to go for whatever it's called, the Prava, or something else decent from hand, then might not last very long. Swings in with a bunch of stuff. I think I'll risk blocking with the Charming Prince. If we lose it, then so be it. And that is Celestial Flare. Target player sacrifices an attacking or blocking creature. Yep. So down goes the Charming Prince to more removal. We're managing to keep the enchantment at least. And another Wrath. A Fumigate. There's a Ghostway for us. Just a little bit too late, unfortunately. You can't have that many Wraths left, surely. So now it's a land. We might as well go for the Priest. We're not going to be destroying anything with our commander. I'll just put the life into it. Into the Ancient Tomb, that is. And there we see a Felidar Guardian, part of a combo. Let's go for the 3 mana Combat Thrasher as well, which will also cantrip upon entry into another land. So we've got 5 mana held up. Could go for the Ghostway, just in case there's another Wrath, but I'm just going to gamble and assume that there isn't one. Let's go Commander's Insignia in order to buff our commander next turn. And this goes nicely with the Double Striker as well. It will be a 3/3 by the end of this turn once we've flickered it. But we're getting +2/+2 buffs at the moment. And the other Orzhov player is quickly running out of cards. So point Teleportation Circle at the artifact creature. And then it re-enters to cantrip us and is now a 5/5 double strike. Clears another land off the top. Well, I was wrong apparently. This is just Wrath Tribal, so he's going to have 7 might tokens with toxic, not enough to one-shot us, thankfully. But being able to destroy some of those is going to be handy. Recruiter of the Guard, what do we go for with that? Honestly, it's probably just something like one of the very few cantrips that we have left in the list. Drop a land. Let's get down the liege so that we can start to tap down and destroy some of these things. Comes down as a 5/6 and we'll buff our Syr Vondam even further. And we'll finally get to see what happens when you play Syr Vondam with some anthems in play at least. So let's see here. We put the black trigger on the stack first, pointed at the same one as where the white will tap. So that means that when the white one resolves, it taps it. Then the black trigger sees that it is tapped and it will destroy that thing. And our commander comes in as a 7/7 Vigilance Menace, so that may well be a threat to our opponent. Although we've lost our one means of unblockable at the moment, we're not really trying to threaten commander damage. Good to know, it can be relevant though. Unfortunately, the liege is a cast trigger, but no matter how much they buff these, they're only going to deal 1 toxic damage. It's double strike they would need. So we'll point the flicker at our commander, and it comes straight back into play, and can destroy another might thanks to its buff. Needs to be at 4 power or more, don't forget. And we don't need to worry about wither from the toxic either, so we can block these and get rid of even more. A crib swap onto the liege. We're not really all that worried about that at the moment, as long as we can keep hold of the anthem. But we are going to get a life and a buff on our commander, so that stays at a 6/6. Syr Sheriff. When it enters, you can sacrifice a token and exile a creature an opponent controls. It's just removal tribal, seemingly. He's down to 1 card in hand though. And we are going to be able to remove something with this when he decides to get rid of it. Oh, it's until it leaves the battlefield. It's no ring effect, alright, so just permanently getting rid of the token. But that will further buff our commander because it was exiled. And we'll see the last card in hand here perhaps. Nope, that is Prava from the command zone. So let's see how many flickers we can get in one turn. Bunch of 2/5 swinging in, we'll take one of those out. And we only take 3 poison damage. I can't imagine that's going to be relevant. Might be an idea for us to swing in first and see if we can force our opponent to block. Just drew into Ephemerate. Maybe finally holding up Ghostway might be a good idea, considering our opponent just wants to remove absolutely everything. When does it come back in though? Yeah, this one's at the beginning of the next end step. Let's swing in before we do anything else. We did land 7 points of commander damage on him previously, so this would leave him with just 1 hit left. He has to trade out 2 of his creatures though. The mites couldn't block anyway. Okay, he is deciding on the double block. He's forgetting about Menace. And we do have enough with 7 power to take out both of those. So I think with our opponent having so few cards in hand, we're okay to go for some card draw. I can't shoot her out any kind of combo at the moment. We could go for Abdul with the Felidar Guardian, and that would give us infinite power onto this. But unless we draw into it here, we can't do it. So let's just see what we can grab with the Recruiter. We've got Spirited Companion, the Witch Enchanter, Solemn, Skyclave Apparition, Ravenous Chupacabra, the Knight of the White Orchid is pretty useless, the Helpful Hunter we saw previously, Flickerwisp and Callous Blood Mage. I think we'll go for the Hunter. What are the other modes on this? Could make Pest Tokens, which we're not really bothered about. Go for the card draw and play the card draw. And these little creatures are a lot less useless now that we've got the Insignia in play. Let's go for the Felidar Guardian. And flicker with that. Another Recruiter of the Guard, I think. Can't see these being too much of a threat. That will further buff the commander and allow us another tutor. So then we'll try the Flickerwisp, I think. Or we could just play Spirited Companion now. No, because we won't be able to hold up the Ghostway. So we'll make it Flickerwisp. And pass the turn at that. Our opponent is going to need 2 creatures to be in play. Let's flicker the Felidar Guardian, and then that can flicker the Helpful Hunter or go for another tutor, whatever. Just trying to flicker as many things as possible to buff the commander and gain more life. So the Guardian enters and flickers Helpful Hunter immediately. Noteworthy that with the Felidar Guardian we could untap lands if we needed to. So draw a card. When the cat's flickered, it further buffs our commander. So it's good to see that in the late game you can actually start to threaten commander damage with it. Just drawing some more card draw with Night's Whisper. The life gain, incremental life gain from this, I haven't built around at all, but does seem to be reasonably useful. Creates Thrall tokens so that he can double block here. Still got 1 card in hand though. Absolutely no need for us to use the Ghost Way. I think we'll continue to force the double blocks. Let's go Anguished Unmaking onto this. And I suppose as well we can go for Ephemerate now, so that we can draw more cards into this. So let's instead flicker the Felidar Guardian, do the same trick as with the teleportation circle, because that can re-enter and flicker the other cat, and of course gives us more triggers with the commander for more plus counters. So Felidar Guardian goes after the Helpful Hunter, and re-enters and draws us a card, which shows us a Hero's Blade, one of the better equipments that can buff our commander. We get a rebound on the Felidar Guardian. I'll actually just do it on the Helpful Hunter here so that we can swing in with this and not worry about summoning sickness. So they've still got a couple of blockers on us. You draw into a land for the turn, and a Thought Vessel. So we're at 13, plus 7 is only 20. So we could Ravenous Chupacabra on a Thrall, flicker something with the Wisp, and get through for lethal here, I think. And the cat already has Summoning Sickness, so we'll flicker that. Buffing this up to a 14-14. The Kitten will only come into play at the end of the turn, but that doesn't matter. Play the Chupacabra, get rid of a Thrall so that we can get through with our Menace, and swing in for lethal, hoping that we don't see any removal. So managed to get through for lethal here, and there we go, exactly 21 points of damage. Seems as though we were going to be able to start going wide on our opponent, and especially with something like Massacre Worm against a token deck would have been really good. Getting multiple flickers on this, if we could have drawn into Panharmonicon at some point, turns out that would have been a better tutor than the Liege wherever it's ended up, but trying to make the more fun play. Yeah, I thought that was going to be a total dud that game, but it turned out to be a great back and forth in the end, so hopefully you all enjoyed it as well. If you want to see more from it as ever, then be sure to let me know in the comments section. Big thank you for leaving your likes, that recommends the video through to other potential viewers, so massive thank you to those of you who do that, and to the patrons as well. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.